Ooh.
Sounds good. Cheers and welcome to the Windy City. That's Jeremy Birmingham. I'm Austin Ward. These are road breaks ahead of Ohio State against Northwestern in Wrigley Field. Not technically at Northwestern, as you all know, and we've talked about.
Are they in Northwestern? Are we in you now, Northwestern? That's a debate for another day.
I don't know, but we are stoked to be here. A lengthy drive, but a beautiful arrival into Chicago to go to Short Fuse. We are just steps away from Big Ten headquarters.
Yeah.
And this is one of the finest breweries in Chicago that I have found. Good meal, good beer. I've got the 1872 Oktoberfest. I'm keeping it going into November.
It is mysterious lighting, Eric Chappell says. That's right. This is as close as we could get to an interrogation. But I promise you.
Mysterious is a word for it.
As we viewed our options around this hotel room, this was the best one because in that corner back there, it's very dark and truly mysterious. Down goes Anderson. We got a Tate Martell auto incoming.
Oh.
I doubt it because we're going to be opening some 2024 Luminance, courtesy of Card Collector 2 in Grove City, the best card shop in America.
It's the best card shop in the entire world.
So I don't believe that Tate is in this set.
He's not, and I believe he retired from football. So shout out to Card Collector 2 for sending us with this Luminance. We had a box of this earlier. I opened it. It was the Sophie's Choice night where Berm took the On It Ohio State box, which did not yield him a Jeremiah Smith auto.
No, you got a Cade Stover auto.
I did. No, that was in Elite. That was.
Oh, you right.
Different set. But big news coming. So Black Friday is in a couple weeks at Card Collector 2 down in Grove City, and Bowman Chrome U will be out. Hoping to get some of that maybe for some home breaks in the coming weeks. Maybe again some road breaks in Indianapolis. Either way, that's a super fun set. It's got Ohio State players. It's got Ohio State autographs in it. You won't want to miss that. I think it comes out right before Thanksgiving, so keep an eye out for that. But there's all kinds of great deals, and the new class of Ohio State rookies, including Marvin Harrison Jr. Their cards are doing quite well.
We got a comment from a Bill Landis.
A who?
A Bill Landis, who said, the guys made fun of me a few weeks ago for being in a jail, and now look at you.
Wow. Well.
Oh, the tables have turned, Bill.
You shouldn't have taken that comment because they didn't send it into us on subtext, which is where whoever this Bill Landis is.
I don't trust him. That's all I know.
Text it to us because we got 50, 60, 200 questions. Appreciate you all for sending them in to us. We checked in once we got to Short Fuse and said, hey, we're going live in a couple hours. We're ready for your questions. And then immediately, the first one was from Steven Steen. Usually my favorite. I don't think I can even read this out loud. Who will win the border war and why is it the Rams by 50? And then he sent another one that I'm definitely not going to repeat. Go Pokes. That's all we have to say.
I will say, you told me to bet against Wyoming tonight, right?
I did say that.
Adam G says we need a Paul Skenes card. We have a better chance of getting a Tate Martell card in this Luminance box tonight than Paul Skenes. Although it does lead me to an interesting first question for you, Austin, before we dive into the subtext.
Uh-huh.
So that comment from Adam is about Paul Skenes' one-of-one MLB debut patch that was announced on Wednesday by Topps.
Yeah.
The Pirates have offered 30 years worth of behind home plate season tickets to whoever gives the card to the Pirates. And a bunch of other stuff, including.
Well, do they have to give the card? Sometimes a bounty is just.
No, they want it to be on display at PNC Park.
All right.
So it's also includes a couple Paul Skenes autographed jerseys, which could fetch a pretty penny, right?
Yeah.
But that one-of-one Paul Skenes card is probably going to get $1 million.
It's a difficult proposition to decide what to do with that because it could be one of the most. Now, I don't know if it has the long-term value. In the short run, it could have one of the highest price tags of any card that you could pull in a 3 or 4 year stretch. It's almost certain to go down. So do you want Pirate season tickets and some jerseys?
Well, see, because
do you want to sit with Livy Dunn?
Yeah, Livy Dunn, his girlfriend and famous influencer / LSU Olympian gymnast, not Olympian.
I don't think she's an Olympian.
Gymnast has said that if she's sweetening the pot by saying that whoever pulls that card and gives it to the Pirates can sit with her.
Why would they need to do that? She's got
But it's also
go sit behind home plate.
the odds of it being pulled by a Pirates fan are exceptionally low.
That's true.
Or by someone who lives in Pittsburgh, even lower.
Just have
So
to
like
move there.
I mean, if the Pirates, Pirates, if you're listening, buy the person who pulls it a house in Pittsburgh and give them the 30 years of season tickets behind home
Did
plate.
you just want to talk about baseball because this game's at Wrigley Field?
Yeah.
I knew it.
Let's talk about football.
Dylan McFarland. He wants, I think he's trying to test how much I've had to drink already. He said, will play calling be affected by the field conditions or the wall that's a couple of feet from the end zone? We did not go to Wrigley Field for the tour that they let media go in there and get shots. We were still
On the
video
road.
shots, not drink shots. We were still on the road in. We didn't go. So I'm going to hold my tongue. I think I've said all I have to say about the increased risk of injury and how I don't believe that this was worth it. I do think it's possible that in the corner of those end zones, you might not call, if you're Chip Kelly and Ryan Day, some fades into the corner of that end zone, just because it's in the back of your mind. It may well turn out to be completely safe in all four corners. The turf may stay down. I don't know. I'll see it tomorrow, and I may have a better answer for that. I do think that it's probably in Ohio State's mind that they might not dial up throws to the corner of the end zone.
Yeah, and again, as I said on the Bold Predictions show on Friday morning, like it's ultimately not that different looking than, say, Nebraska or some of the other stadiums Ohio State has played in. But I don't know, are they padding the wall for the morning?
There are some pads up already.
Because that's what changes it ultimately. I mean, it still hurts like hell if you're running 22 miles an hour and you hit a padded wall, especially when it's that close to the back of the end zone. But if it's a brick wall, then that's a totally different story. We all talked about it on Bold Predictions, but I think that there's a fairly good chance Ohio State tries to move this game along quickly. And some of that's going to be, if you're in the red zone, and especially if you're at the 1 or 2 yard line, I think if you can't run the ball up Nebraska's backside from the 2 yard line, then Northwestern, that's a problem. So
goes right hand in hand with Grant. I think it was maybe more of a comment and tongue in cheek. Who was excited about Ohio State playing at Wrigley? I think Austin is. And again, my thing is not that it's not very cool to see the most historic college football team, in my opinion, in Ohio State, in one of the most historic stadiums in America, although it is a baseball stadium. Like, I think people are going to have a great time in Wrigleyville, the Ohio State fans that have traveled, of which there are many. Maybe more would have come if it was Soldier Field. I can't prove that. Northwestern was surely banking on selling a ton of tickets to Ohio State fans who are going to be out there drinking early and having a good time. Like, that part's very cool. My primary concern, I've tried to make this clear, not about press box, not about traffic, Chicago, any of the other it's not about me. I think this was an increased risk of injury for the players that was unnecessary. Everything else about it, I would say, it is definitely very cool.
Yeah. And there is a touch of what's what I'm looking for? Sentimental value. So when we started Letterman Row in 2018, our first trip ever that we took was for Big Ten Media Days that year, and we went to a game at Wrigley Field. That was the night that all of the Urban Meyer, Zach Smith stuff went down. It was it's kind of cool from that perspective. But as far as the stadium goes, I mean, I'm excited to see a football game. I hope that it goes well. That's basically where I'm at. If it goes off without a hitch and no one gets hurt and there's no bunch of issues, then I'm going to look back on it and be like, hey, that was probably pretty cool. But if there's a 5 or 10% increase in the chance of injury or something, then it's maybe not worth it to me. So my first auto is Tyrion Arnold, the Detroit Lions rookie corner, out of 100. This is a beautiful card.
That's very cool.
I do wish that it was in a Lions uniform as opposed to the college uniform, but
yeah, I think you have to get which one is it? Draft day or pen pal?
And then I got a Kool-Aid McKinstry.
Year one.
Out of 25, a rookie card of
Kool-Aid Man.
Right and behind it, which is also, that's, which variant is this?
I don't know. We'll find out. Noah would like to know, Berm, if Ohio State's second string defensive line is officially better than the starting defensive line.
No. It's not. It's different. It brings a little bit of different energy, but they're certainly not as competent on a down-in and down-out basis. If they were, they'd be playing.
Starters.
I don't think that Larry Johnson is intentionally playing guys that he doesn't think are better. I do think that it's clear Ryan Day and Jim Knowles are getting their input heard a little bit more in the last few weeks, and so you're seeing more of Caden Curry, of Kenyatta Jackson, of Edric Houston, and these younger guys. I'd still like to see more of Caden McDonald, but I think you're getting into the habit right now of guys rotating in and getting a lot of reps. Is that a CJ Stroud?
This is CJ Stroud, and then a numbered Joe Burrow right behind
Savage.
him.
That's a beauty.
Yeah, very cool. Love, even if it's second year CJ Stroud, I will gladly take it.
We got a Jalen McMillan rookie and a Cade Stover base.
There you go. Little Buckeye version.
The Cade Stover is pretty.
Yeah, I mean, I think that as the year has progressed, you've seen the depth and Ohio State's willingness to play it on the defensive line change. And I think, as you alluded to, Berm, some of that is Ryan Day and Jim Knowles being more involved, I think, in the personnel decisions for the defensive line than they were early in the year. And I don't think that you have some of what you've seen that has worked maybe better for Ohio State is not being stagnant. It's like Jack and JT do not have to come off the field at the exact same time. You can put Caden Curry in the game for one or the other. You can put Kenyatta Jackson in the game for one or the other. When you go to the three-man front, and I thought that was a little bit interesting with the Jack stuff last week. It's like, well, that was all backup defensive linemen, then plus Mitchell Melton and CJ Hicks. It's like, you don't have to do it that way. But Ohio State, I don't mean that as a criticism because I don't want to have it both ways. Earlier in the week, I said, this is important. You're actually seeing Ohio State, letting them get growth, learning experiences, early reps in the game. Like, they made a choice to do that. And I applaud that because we've not seen them do that very often previously in the Ryan Day era. So I'm not going to try and have it both ways on that. But you're not going to find out if Caden Curry is capable of 25 to 30 reps if you don't put him in some of these earlier situations. And I think that he is. I mean, he has been very productive when he's been put on the field.
Yeah, and well, I imagine we see a lot of those guys tomorrow. But again, I also don't think it's entirely fair or accurate to suggest that JT Tuimoloau and Jack Sawyer haven't had a good year. I mean, JT does lead the team in sacks. Jack is, I think, second, right behind him. So I just think sometimes they're not being compared against other players. They're being compared against expectations as 5 stars. And here we are 4 years into their careers. And it's probably time to put those recruiting rankings to rest and just compare them to what they are expected to be now. And I think that they, especially JT, the last couple of weeks, I think, has played pretty well. And Jack has been close. And I mean, again, we talk about PFF grades all the time. Jack's PFF grades have been incredible all year long.
Yeah. And JT's have been high as well. And I think against Penn State, I'm trying to remember what I found on that. It was like one of the highest run defense grades of his career.
I think it's disappointing when we are in November opening 2024 football cards, and the Saquon Barkley card is still in a Giants uniform. Well, I realize, but these just came out recently, right?
Yeah.
Like, you could have photoshopped in an Eagles jersey. You could have swapped out the photo. It's almost December.
Yeah, but that's Panini for you. And since they didn't send us along any cards of their own, then we can still be.
Yeah, Panini, you kind of are jerks. We'll talk about that later.
Ryan Milner asked, should we be concerned about the picture posted of Zone 6 that didn't have a mecha in it? No, you should not be. He was active already earlier on Friday in the Best Fridays in Football stuff at the Woody before they left. It is strange that he wasn't in that. It looked like it was a full positional unit picture, but I do not believe.
He could have been in the bathroom.
I don't believe there's any reason to be concerned about that, but very observant, Ryan. I'll give you credit for that. Andrew says, I haven't even read it yet. Let's see what we got. I feel like a lot of people on this team have yet to have a really outstanding game, and many are more than capable. What player would you like to see have a career game before the end of the season? Okay, that's a good question. He's going first. This is Andrew Milbrandt. I really want Quinshawn to have a monster game. He transferred in, has split reps, and his longest run got called back. I'd love to see him have a 75-yard touchdown, 150 total, and 3 tutties. and 50 yards receiving. Why not? And they signed to AJ. So sorry if that's what you go by, AJ. Someone who I actually think that I agree with that for the most part. Now, Jeremiah has done some ridiculous things, of course. But in terms of like record-breaking individual performances, which is not the standard.
Yeah.
You shouldn't have to do that all the time or do that. I don't think we have seen, which is also why I don't think we've seen Ohio State collectively play its best game yet.
Yeah, I want to see Will Howard have a career day, a day that wakes people up nationally to who he is and what he's accomplished for Ohio State, because I think he's been exceptional, and I've said that a lot, and I think sometimes maybe I'm saying it too much, but my second auto is Dallas Turner, rookie from the Minnesota Vikings, second Alabama rookie.
Well, there you go. That's in the
auto.
pro
This
jersey.
is in the Vikings uni.
Is that the year one? Yes, the year one.
Yeah, so
that's what you're looking for. Those are good.
First round pick auto is always a win.
Yeah. So you said Will Howard.
I just think that Will Howard is a guy that has played pretty darn well, and maybe he hasn't had a game where it's like, you know, a 6 touchdown day like CJ had against Michigan State or Dwayne had a couple times. Like, I think you have that. I think he's got that in him if the Buckeyes want to let that happen, but it just hasn't. And I think that it's potentially that they could.
I think this would qualify as maybe greedy for the Ohio State part. Excuse me.
Yeah, what's up?
Oh, Joe Burrow belongs to me. We can talk about a price later. I think the answer for me would be Caleb Downs, because what would a career day look like for him? He is so reliable on a snap-in, snap-out basis. And I pointed this out a couple of times, like in the Buckeye Q this week with the Jack. Seeing him come up, it was not an easy play to make, but seeing him miss a tackle that he could have made was like shocking, which is how good he is regularly. And there have been conversations about talking with Albert Breer earlier this week, where it's like the NFL scouts are looking at number 2 and number 4, and they're not talking about Emeka. They're talking about Jeremiah Smith and Caleb Downs already, and they don't have access to those guys yet. They're still both going to be in school for at least one more year. But everyone has I think Ohio State fans included, we certainly do have an appreciation for what Caleb Downs is doing for the Ohio State defense every single week, but it hasn't translated to like a crazy statistical day. It hasn't been an interception, a pick six, forced fumbles or something that get people's attention. Like, he's not coming up a ton for individual awards, which is fine. Like, that's not the way.
It's weird though. You're playing a position that's not really designed for that. I mean, especially in today's football, like the job of the safety is just to make sure you don't get beat.
Right.
His job, and he's been exceptional in the run game and run fits, but yeah, I think you'd like to see him have a day with an interception or two and something that allows him to put his talents on display, or a punt return or something like that.
This was Matt Brown. Question specifically for you. Any sense of how the roster retention process will go after the season? Are players like J.J. Smith at risk of leaving for more money? Given how much the sport is changing, do schools have agreements with players, or do they have to re-recruit a lot of their existing roster every year? Thanks.
How bad do you want to feel? Really? Every player it's open season on every single player. I talked about it on the last episode of Talking Stuff, but I really think you have to begin to look, at least right now, until we get into the collective bargaining and all the other stuff that's coming, and eventually the unionization of college football, because it has to occur.
Yeah.
Every year, like, the roster has to be basically viewed as a one-year roster. And it is going to be, you can have agreements with kids coming out of high school as far as NIL, and we expect the player to be there for X amount of years for them to get their full amount. But none of that stuff is particularly strong or solid in the court of law. And it's all basically just turned around and said, well, player freedom, they can do whatever they want. And so, yeah, every player is open for negotiation, like every player. And it is somewhat terrifying. We've seen this entire week the conversation around LSU commitment Bryce Underwood, the quarterback from Michigan, who was reported that Michigan has offered him a $10.5 million over the course of his career. And if somebody asked me on Twitter on Friday, is that insane or is it right? And I think it can be both.
The decision
or the
amount of money?
Both. I mean, I think it can be both. It's insane but it also may be right. There's no way for us to prove it. Players like Jeremiah Smith, it is hard to know exactly what is being commanded, but it's also hard to know exactly what promises are being made. And like, until there's some transparency in this field, it's just never going to be something we can answer correctly. I think the correct answer when it comes to roster building and retention is that you have to view the roster every single year as a 1-year exercise. And that's why here we are 2.5 weeks to the early signing period. And there are 4 or 5 different players in Ohio State's recruiting class, which is currently ranked number 1 in the country, and has been since June, that may end up elsewhere. And the idea from people is, well, Ohio State doesn't have backups. They don't have backup plans for these guys. Maybe they don't, but also, like, you don't know who's going to be available in 3 weeks. Like, once the transfer portal opens, you have to ask yourself very seriously, is it more important to get a high school senior defensive end or the all MAC defensive end or the all Sun Belt Conference defensive end? Like, I lean toward it's more valuable on a 1-year basis, especially for kids, unless you are a Jeremiah Smith or a Devin Sanchez or a Naeem Alford, some guy like that who you know is going to come in and play as a freshman. Doesn't it make more sense to get a dude who's like played 3 years of college ball? Like, and I think we just have to completely change the way we view recruiting. But as far as roster retention, when that $18 to $20 million or so comes from collective bargaining or the profit sharing or whatever it's called, that is going to pay for like the bottom half of the roster. Like, that's not going to, that money is not going to Jeremiah Smith. Like, they're still going to have to be bigger, better, more grandiose, more comprehensive deals that are signed for guys like JJ and Caleb Downs, and, you know, Josh Simmons, if you want to try to convince him to return for next year. Like, it's that $20 million roster that we've been talking about all year this year is going to be 15 million more than that. It's going to have to be, like, because that 20 plus million, and I've heard that 18 to 20 that we keep seeing for profit sharing, I've heard might be closer to like 9 to 12. And if that's the case, I mean, we have to readjust everything. But this is not going to be fun for college football. Like, it's going to be a disaster.
But it's also why college football administrators, and I think this is more of a question for presidents than athletic directors, but everyone involved, you cannot keep saying, well, they're not going to be employees. We can't have collective bargaining. Can't have, you know, union agreements. You have to. They're going to have to be employees. Otherwise, college football becomes as you said, a free-for-all year after year after year with no continuity. Ohio State's done a better job than just about any program in the country of maintaining that. It's honestly remarkable that they have not had the mass amounts of both attrition and reliance on bringing in players from the transfer portal, because everyone else is.
They built their team out of the portal this year.
My mistake. First auto for me was Trey Benson. Looks like a yellow diamond. I don't know. Out of 100 for Trey Benson to the Cardinals.
My third auto is Anthony Gould.
Yeah.
An Indianapolis Colt who I've never heard of.
Yeah, is that another year one though?
It's another year one. He's a 5th round pick, a wide receiver from Oregon State. I've never heard of him. He has a number on the card of 00 that's photoshopped in.
Yep.
So I got there's at least an outside chance he's not on the roster.
Well, they took that. That's just a Photoshop jersey on there.
Yeah.
So. Kevin wants to know, of all the draft eligible players that could leave next season, who would you like to see return the most?
Josh Simmons.
Yeah.
I think that's a no-brainer. I guess Quinshon Judkins is on that list, but the idea that he could return seems far-fetched. So
I think it's Josh Simmons. It's got to be. It's a good question. I wish we had a longer answer, but I think in terms of what Ohio State needs and the way you project it forward, if they're having to replace both tackles, that would be pretty problematic. Plus, Josh Simmons was playing the best of anyone on the Ohio State offensive line when he got hurt.
Yeah, I mean, the conversation around Josh Simmons as a first-round pick was very, very real. We'll see what happens moving forward, but that was not just Ohio State blowing him up or gassing him up. I mean, that was the conversation.
Tyler Boyd would like to know which player has most surpassed your preseason expectations.
That's a fair question. Is it cheating to say Will Howard? Because I had pretty high hopes for him, and I thought he was going to be a Heisman finalist, but he's been
Then probably cheating, yeah.
Arvell Reese, Cody Simon, maybe Cody. I'm going to go with Cody because I think that even though I knew he was going to be the entrenched starter, there was at least some question mark about is he good enough to be like an every down difference maker in the middle of the defense for Ohio State, and he has absolutely been that. So to me, it's Cody Simon.
I think I mentioned this maybe on Tuesday or Wednesday, maybe several times throughout the week about the tight ends. I think G. Scott's year has been a lot more productive than I envisioned it would be. Some of that has been out of necessity with Will Kaczmarek out for the last month. Some of it has been just making some tough catches. I'd say, is he a perfect tight end blocker still? No, probably not. Is it important for Ohio State to get Will Kaczmarek back for the playoff push? Yeah, definitely. But I think the collective effort from that tight end group has been, if you say that was the biggest question mark of any position group going into the year, I don't think you could say that they have been cause for concern at this point. And G. Scott's been a key part of that.
No, I mean, and we're starting to see slowly but surely the development of Jelani Thurman, Bennett Christian being an effective part of the offense. And the G. Scott experiment. I told him last week after the game when we were up in the team room, like, he looks like a tight end now. And he certainly has worked his butt off to get there. So I'm not opening this last pack. I'm just opening this last pack. You're one behind. I'm a faster opener than you.
Yeah, you always.
Yeah, I got like an insatiable urge to rip.
I like to take my time, and I like to enjoy road breaks and road beers.
Yeah, well, I just like to rip stuff.
Tammy wants to say that she's going to see us tomorrow at the game, and she hopes you're feeling better.
I mean, I'm here, Tammy. That's all I can say.
If you could relive, this is from Sullivan. He regular questions for road breaks. Shout out to you. If you could relive any game or moment from your time at Ohio State, covering Ohio State, which would you choose?
Probably the Sugar Bowl against Alabama. That's probably the one because that game felt like a heavyweight fight from the start. But even though Alabama was number 1, Ohio State was number 4, there were twists and turns in the game. There were ups and downs. I never felt like Ohio State was going to lose that game, So if I go back to like 2016 in the Michigan game in 2016, the double overtime game, there were moments when Ohio State was in that game and you're like, oh my God, what are these guys doing? This is horrible. And that never felt that way against Bama. That was one of like the best games I've ever watched. And again, I've joked about this before, but I mean, Lane Kiffin deserves all the credit in the world for not giving the ball to Derrick Henry, which would have certainly changed the way that game went. But
credit, huh? That's the way you want to put it?
Yeah. What, does not get credit for it?
Oh,
he was working against Nick Saban. He hated him.
I know. I wonder if that guy Bill Landis that was in the chat, if he's a Birds fan, if he was looking for this Randall Cunningham autograph out of 100. That's Light Speed Ink. I was not expecting to see a Randall Cunningham.
No, me neither. Closer to Tate Martell every minute. Just kidding. Randall Cunningham has one of the longest punts in NFL history. Do you know that?
I did know that.
He has a 90-yard punt to his credit in the NFL.
Go Birds, they say.
But the moment of Zeke in the 85-yard run at the end in the fourth quarter is one of the it is the only time in my experience covering this team where I have audibly cheered for the Buckeyes on the field.
The only time?
Where I was like, screw it. I don't care about decorum in this moment. I was standing right next to Kirk Herbstreit and Eddie George. There's a famous picture of those guys at that moment. And it was so cool, especially because that was at the start of really covering the team and being there for every moment. And so that game stands out to me for sure.
I'd like to be able to relive and assist the SEC officials in the 2019 Fiesta Bowl because
Bill says he pulled a Will Howard auto so they could work a trade.
how did he pull a Will Howard auto?
I don't know. How did you pull a Will Howard auto, Bill? Is it?
I guess we'll have to talk about that.
An old Bowman Chrome?
Well, I think maybe there's NIL cards in this set.
Oh, there's some Onnits?
Not Onnits, no. NIL cards. Eric says, when should Ohio State put in their backups? Do you think Julian Sayin or Devin Brown should get more reps? Love the notebook, by the way. Keep it going. We will, Eric. I don't know if it's going to be – it might have to revert a little bit to the original form, which was not trying to get 5 to 6 or more interviews with players and coaches after the game. We have to adjust based on what happened last week, as many other people on this beat will have to as well. But I still want to – there are lots of other people we can talk to. It's been cool. Like after the Penn State game, there were a bunch of fans out there by the buses. I'd love to, get thoughts from people who traveled to the game if it's tomorrow at Wrigley Field or if it's Indy or, even the people who wait outside for autographs outside the Ohio State locker room. I still like the concept. Maybe there will be opportunities again when people get removed, because I thought last week's episode, 99.9% and 99.9% of all the notebooks we've done so far have been pretty cool and insightful coverage of what happens after a game. Even last week you had Seth McLaughlin talking about the charity and James Laurinaitis with his family, bringing them into the stadium. Like I still would like to be able to do some of that. If it's not directly with the players, I can understand that, and we'll abide by whatever rules, regulations, stipulations Ohio State has to cover this team. We have certainly no issue with that. As for Sayin or Brown getting more reps, I think maybe you and I don't fully agree on this. So I think you're going to say Julian Sayin.
As far as tomorrow?
So it's two parts from Eric. When should Ohio State play in their backups? I think as soon as they get up by 21 would be my answer. Do you think Julian Sayin or Devin Brown should get more reps?
Again, this goes back to what we talked about last week. I think if something happened and Will Howard had to miss significant time, I understand the need or the desire to have Devin Brown get more reps. I think Devin Brown needs to get reps with the starters, okay, not with the backups. So I would much rather advocate for him to get the third series of the game as opposed to coming in when it's 35-3. Like, it makes no sense to me to have Devin Brown come in the fourth quarter and run around like a chicken with his head cut off because he's got no blocking. I want to see him have a chance to run the real offense. When it comes to the backups, I think Julian Sayin should be playing, because you do have to start looking ahead a little bit to next year and getting him some reps in letting him just get hit a little bit. But as far as Devin Brown, like, I don't think he shouldn't be playing, and that was what I was trying to say last week against whoever they played last week, Purdue.
Yeah.
Like, I just didn't think he needed to be playing in a backup role against Purdue. Like, there's no value there. There's no there.
Yeah, I think and maybe I'm still in the old school line of thinking here with all the chips being in the middle of the table for this particular season. Like, if Devin Brown could use more experience in game situations, more reps to get more comfortable, like Ohio State getting into the postseason, and if it needed to address something like that, Devin Brown would be clearly more ready and more prepared to keep Ohio State on track for that. So is it more beneficial to get him involved? I think so. I don't think this team with the championship on the line needs to have, and you have to have some eye on the future at all time. I understand that. I don't think they need to be worrying about the 2025 quarterback situation in the midst of this. So maybe there's a world where you could say, well, Julian Sayin would then need some of those reps, so because he's now the next backup quarterback if it gets to that. And Devin Brown has been in the program for 3 years and doesn't need to be as engaged in that level. Like, I would listen to any of those arguments, but I think right now, I'd like maybe getting Devin Brown even a full, if you get up 21 points, letting Devin Brown work with the starters in the first half tomorrow would be beneficial.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. That makes way more sense to me. We got an all Eagles night. We got a dual patch of Jalen Hurts and Donovan McNabb.
Oh my gosh.
So now we've got.
How does this keep happening with the boxes that we get? They're
So
like not collated.
We've got all Eagles all the time. Go Birds.
This Bill Landis person, we got his boxes, I think. Luke wants to know, would you rather eat 3 pale hot dogs that have been sitting outside in the sun for 3 weeks? This is someone who watches the show. Shout out to you, Luke. Or have Ohio State lose to Indiana and then Michigan this year? Take one for the team, fellas. If all it took to avoid the complete doomsday scenario on what our life would be like covering Ohio State if they lost those 2 games, I would gladly scarf down those dogs.
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to eat 6 of them if I have to.
Well, you didn't say 6.
I'm just saying I'll eat 6 of them if it means the Buckeyes beat Michigan this year, okay? Like, I am not
You're going to do whatever it takes?
I am not in a mental place to deal with another loss to Michigan, especially this Michigan team. I am not equipped to handle it. I want to be very clear. I will not put up with it.
Yeah. In honor of the game being at Wrigley, I think this is from Steven. What's a historic stadium that you guys would like to see Ohio State play a game at?
There's this place in Columbus called Ohio Stadium.
Mm-hmm.
It's 100 years old.
I've heard of it.
I'd like to see them play games there. That's just my
thing. You've already seen that, actually.
Oh.
You would like to see it happen. I believe you've probably seen
no, I don't know that there's
100.
I mean, I've seen them at the Rose Bowl. I'd like to see them at the Swamp. I want to cover a game in Florida. That's a place I've never been able to cover a game at. The idea of them playing at Bryant-Denny and Tuscaloosa in a couple of years, I don't think it will end up happening, but I think it's cool. Beyond that, we were talking about the Ohio State-Penn State game a few weeks ago and how that series now is not going to be an every year thing. I wish it were. I think it should stay that way, but I think they should rotate it between the Heinz Field in Pittsburgh and Cleveland Brown Stadium and make it a neutral site game like Georgia and Florida, which is not a real rivalry, but like they still make it into a thing. Make it a border war.
It's a pretty big rivalry.
Yeah, but all those schools in the SEC say everyone's their rival. Florida's my rival. Tennessee's my rival. Alabama's my rival. Auburn's my rival. How many rivals can Georgia have? Georgia Tech's my rival. You can't have.
Here's the thing. No one actually claims Tennessee as a rival.
Tennessee claims that, but they claim themselves to be the rival of everyone.
They have the 3rd Saturday in October, which was with the cigars.
I would like to see them play at Tennessee as well.
Yeah, at Neyland would be very cool. And I would say both stadiums that I used to work in, they should play games there. War Memorial Stadium, Ohio State should go play there. And Neyland Stadium, they should go play there.
Ohio State
at Wyoming.
At Wyoming,
yeah.
Okay.
Which would be great.
Yeah, that's not going to happen. But so
why?
Well, because it holds like 15 people.
No, it doesn't.
How many people does it hold?
30,000.
How many fewer is that than Wrigley Field?
Get out of here.
My point is, make it a border war between Ohio State and Pennsylvania. Find a way to bring back the old Big 33 game between Ohio and Pennsylvania high school students. Make it a thing where it's like you rotate between the NFL stadiums. If you don't want to do it on campus, which I'm fine with because I hate going to Penn State. Oh, my God. It's the worst trip in our litany of trips. So make it you can even rotate it between Cincinnati, Philadelphia, Pittsburgh, Cleveland, right?
Okay.
Like you can do that.
Okay.
So make that happen, America. That game should be every year, but it doesn't need to be on campus.
I didn't actually find Bryant-Denny to be that historic and awesome. Like Neyland is the best experience. Or best historic stadium in the SEC. The best atmosphere is at Death Valley and LSU. The Swamp is very cool as well. But like in terms of massive cathedrals of college football, Neyland is the best in my opinion.
Sure. But I just want everyone to get on board with this idea of the Ohio-Pennsylvania border war and rotating it between the 2 NFL stadiums in each state. Okay?
Yeah.
Everyone's fine with it. That game needs to be continued to be played every year.
Well, move to 12 conference games. So someone wise has been making that point for a while. JJ has an interesting twist on it. That offense up north has been working better with Davis Warren and Orji playing together. Have they? I'm not sure I agree with that. Thoughts? Still nervous for the game.
I just watched him score 15 points against Indiana. I don't think so. I don't think it's working better. It doesn't work better if Orji is not at least a threat to throw the ball. So he has not been. However, I won't deny that I do have a worry that Michigan is at this point holding things back just for the Ohio State game because their season is over. So I could see them like holding some things back, which would annoy me, but I could see it. Am I worried about the game? Of course I'm worried about the game.
You never stop worrying.
No, I'm worried. I'm always worried.
Here's one of those NIL cards. We got to look at.
Bill said that is how he got the.
Yeah, well, I think hitting the Will Howard is better than a Riley Leonard.
I don't know. Notre Dame fans will eat that up.
They probably will. Here's what they look like. If you can see that, we're pretty far away on the camera tonight. Keller asks if Quinshon Judkins is really considering a return. I don't know. We're at the point where I know that those questions are going to come up more and more. Nobody has made a definitive decision at this point. We talked about that with Josh Simmons. It's going to come up. Obviously Quinshon is in that boat potentially as well. But, sometimes we'll hear guys that have already committed. No matter what happens, I'm going to be coming back, or the draft stock's not where it needs to be. On November 15th, as we sit here right now, and this is not to avoid answering the question directly, I don't think that's not the serious.
There's just no way to know. There are potentially 8 games left in the season for Ohio State. And if I can, here we are, it's an hour and a half away from Ohio State tipping off on the road at College Station against Texas A&M in a top 25 basketball matchup. But if you go back to 2007, when Ohio State enters the Big Ten tournament, no one in their right mind felt Mike Conley was leaving for the NBA. And then he just went on an absolute run, and any question was eradicated. If Quinshon Judkins goes on an Ezekiel Elliott type run at the end of the season, no, there's no question he's going to the NFL. And I don't think when he arrived at Ohio State there was any consideration to returning for a 4th year of college football,
especially with as much wear and tear as already on his body.
And I would be shocked.
And then Brad asked a similar thing about Sonny. I think Sonny
should come back.
There is some level of conversation that has already occurred there when it comes to Sonny Styles, where he's not done anything at this point to leave no doubt in the minds of NFL general managers, talent evaluators to say you're going to be a first-round pick. And if that's not the case, he's going to make more money playing at Ohio State.
He's a freaky athlete. He's still only been playing linebacker for 5 months. He can go to the NFL and impress people and get a shot, or he could come back, play the position that he's going to play in the NFL, and get much, much better. And I think that's what he should do. I don't think Quinshon's going to improve his draft stock by coming back to Ohio State.
He's not. Daniel says, can someone hold Ryan Day and Justin Fry responsible for the horrible offensive line performance last year against Missouri and the idiotic response about yips? Hinsman should have been playing all along, almost cost us the Nebraska game this year.
You didn't even say you got another Eagles patch. This is a Jalen Carter patch.
It was just assumed there was
Dude,
more birds.
Bill's making out like a bandit sitting in his house right now, ripping cards, watching SmackDown or whatever.
He's probably watching ball.
Unbelievable, Bill. No, I'm not. I don't think bringing up a game from 11 months ago has any bearing on where this team is now. I do think there's legitimate questions about why was Carson Hinsman not really considered earlier in the season for that starting right guard position. But the explanations we've been given were fair, and I don't think that they require a lot of further evaluation. He was sick throughout the entire fall camp. Other guys played well. Donovan Jackson he didn't need to move anyone around. And the idea has always been for Carson to be the team center next year. So the idea of putting him in at guard only complicates that. So the offensive line sucked against Missouri, but so did everything else.
I don't feel like we didn't raise questions about the offensive line performance and the decision against Missouri. Like,
I mean, there were a lot of harsh words said after that game.
I think we were pretty critical of that. And if we're going to be, I think then you also have to turn around and give credit for the work that they've done. Josh Simmons was playing like a first-round draft pick.
Remember, he was a transfer from San Diego State that everyone said was an embarrassment that Ohio State was recruiting him.
Justin Fry was getting quite a lot out of him. Then he turned around and they, had to replace Zen Mahalski on short notice. And what have they done the last couple of weeks? Donovan Jackson didn't play perfectly, but he's moved out on short notice to play left tackle as a senior after multiple years of developing at guard and playing at a pretty high level. Like, offensive line play is good. If you want to be critical of the Missouri game in the Cotton Bowl and hold it against them, by all means do that. But also recognize how productive this group has been this year with Chip Kelly and Justin Fry and Mike Seleni and Tim Drevno, and doing that while also having to replace two key cogs due to injury. And maybe Josh Simmons, I should separate them. I can't call them both key, but the person that they put in at tackle when Josh Simmons went down also got hurt. They've not had a stretch like this dealing with injuries at the offensive line. Really, this is my 13th season covering Ohio State. This is the most they've had to scramble, and they have not missed a beat. In fact, what they did at Penn State and running the ball for that final 5-13 was almost unthinkable given the personnel that they had on the field.
One of the more impressive offensive line performances in the last decade, as far as one drive when they had to have it. So I think there's fair questions about Ohio State's depth on the offensive line and like recruiting in the last few years, about not being able to go out and get an elite tackle somewhere. But when you see this team right now is the semifinalist for the Joe Moore Award, whatever. I mean, there's 134 teams in college football. They're one of the top 10, they're one of the final 10. They will end up being one of the final 5. That's a guarantee. Like, they deserve some credit for that. And yeah, last year that Cotton Bowl sucked for like every reason.
Yeah, it sure did. It was awful. It was one of the worst games I've covered. Nick Brown, I think this will be it. Hey guys, big fan of the show. Keep it up. Thank you, Nick. Really appreciate that. Please help me convince my huge Ohio State fan friend, whom I'm attending the game with, that Will Howard is the dude we need at the helm to win this natty. I hit him with stats and he just shrugs me off like, I don't know, man. Help me sway this doubter that seems to think we have to have CJ to win. I sent him a link to the show, so hopefully he'll be watching and listening. I think you're right.
CJ didn't beat Michigan.
Well, they were cheating.
I know, but he didn't beat them. So, I love CJ as much as anyone can love CJ Stroud.
Yeah. As
a human, as a football player, but he didn't beat Michigan. So if that's your standard, regardless of why it may or may not have happened, that's a weird standard to have. He didn't beat them.
Well, he's asking about winning the Natty, and CJ did almost do that. If not for the targeting,
almost. Craig Krenzel won the Natty. Is he the standard?
We've made this point a lot. Maybe for some people's taste too much. I find Will Howard to be just about the perfect college quarterback. He will never be CJ Stroud in terms of arm talent. I don't think he's going to have the same NFL career or success that CJ Stroud is having. But when I say that he is a nice combination of JT Barrett and Cardale Jones, and probably succeed, has surpassed expectations for both of those when I made that comparison going into the year. And I was trying to find other college quarterbacks a few weeks ago on Three Thoughts Thursday to, maybe make it a more fair or apt comparison. He's pretty unique. He's got some Tebow qualities. He's done some things that remind you of Cam Newton with a slightly or significantly maybe less athleticism. You take and pick Jalen Hurts and Trevor Lawrence and all these things. He does just about something as well as all of those players, kind of molded into one. Not collectively. He doesn't do every single thing to the best ability of all of those players, but with the rushing ability, with the decision-making, I think he is the perfect fit to run a college offense generally and the Ohio State offense specifically.
Ryan Day had a very, very short list of transfer quarterbacks he would have brought into this program to run this team this season, and Will Howard was at the top of that list, alongside Dylan Gabriel. right? So like that's it.
They wanted to get Riley Leonard.
There was conversation about Riley Leonard. That one, thankfully for Ohio State, never really took off because I don't think he'd be the right guy to run this offense.
Agreed.
Will Howard and Dylan Gabriel are the only ones that would have made sense. And that includes Cam Ward, who's obviously having a Heisman-level type season at Miami, although some of that is because he has a lot of Heisman moments that are created by him turning the ball over and having to make plays later. But Will Howard is exactly the right quarterback for this Ohio State team. And I love C.J. Stroud. Love him to death. I thought he was – I think he's the best quarterback we've ever seen at Ohio State. Maybe there's a conversation with Justin Fields just because of his athleticism that takes him to a different part of the conversation. But as far as just like a guy to stand back and be a passer and be a quarterback at Ohio State, C.J. Stroud is the best one I've ever seen in my life.
Yeah.
And I don't know that this offense – it's different because of the structure of the offense and because of Chip Kelly versus Ryan Day and all that stuff. But who else, if you look around the country, who else would you want running this offense?
I think they got the right guy for him. I mean, I firmly believe that. Max will be the final comment in here. We won't have to answer it. He just says he'll buy you two a beer in Wrigley after the game tomorrow. Go Bucks. That's from Max. Hey, if you hang around long enough, when we're done with the notebook and snap judgments, we'll gladly have a beer with you, Max. We would never turn one down. We hope to see, if you're going to be there, hey, we'd love to see you. We'd love to talk to you. Maybe you can get on the notebook because I'm going to be looking for some different people to talk to. And
we talked to fans at Penn State.
Yeah, I know. We'd love to keep that part going. I think that's pretty cool. Shout out Card Collector 2, as always.
Shout out to the Birds.
These were some Philly boxes, so go Birds. But go down to Grove City. Again, it's heading towards Black Friday. They're going to have a huge sale for that. Christmas time. It's always fun to rip cards, but especially, you're looking for a nice gift. There's going to be some college product coming out that you won't want to miss.
I have to say this.
Okay.
I've heard that this weekend in Chicago, where we are, there will be Mariah Carey holiday pop-up bars happening. So if you're out and about and you're looking to get into the holiday spirit.
It's November 15th.
Mariah Carey doesn't sleep. There's two things to be worried about this holiday season. One, the Krampus. Two, Mariah Carey pop-up bars. So if you find one...
What about Mariah Krampus?
Holy Krampus. Mariah Krampus.
Meanwhile, I'm just over here still drinking Oktoberfest.
We're going to be at the stadium what time? 8?
I don't know.
8 a.m. in Chicago?
Whenever we get there, we'll get there. And then we'll do the pregame keys. Card Collector 2.
Yeah,
thank you, Ryan. Thank you to Ryan. Thanks to his whole team. Go down there. Everyone who sent in questions, I know we didn't get to them all. We never do. We tried. We'll keep them out there. Somebody asked the next time we were going to be at Fairway Columbus. We don't have one of those scheduled for Indiana week, even though that is a top 5 matchup. We will be there on the Monday of the week of the game. It'll be a rivalry kickoff on that Monday night if you want to come out to that one for Bryant Heating and Cooling Systems at the Fairway Columbus. And then the next thing on this channel will be pregame keys from Wrigley Field. We're going to get a good look at everything that's going on there with the turf and the wall and the locker room and the bullpen and everything else. But around the game will be cool, and then we'll see what happens from there. But thanks for everyone who joined us tonight. He's Berm. I'm Austin. Enjoy the game. Enjoy the weekend. We'll talk to you later.